I still remember the moment it happened, and honestly, it felt like the ground shifted under my feet. It was early morning. The office was quiet, the kind of quiet where you can hear someone breathing across the room. My coffee was still hot, my computer had just loaded up, and I was going through emails the same way I had for the last 12 years. Nothing unusual. Nothing dramatic. And then, the email appeared. At first, it looked like any other work message, plain subject line, simple wording. But something felt strange the moment I clicked on it. It wasn't addressed to me. It wasn't even meant for me. The only reason it reached my inbox was because someone typed the wrong mark. And that mistake, that tiny slip, exposed everything. The thread was long, dozens of messages stacked on top of each other. I scrolled, expecting to find a project update or a casual note I could forward back with a polite, wrong person. But instead, the first line that caught my eye felt like a punch. We should reduce Mark's influence before shifting him out. My throat tightened. Shift me out. Me. I kept reading. Another line, he won't push back. He's the quiet type. This should be clean. My chest burned. My hand started shaking on the mouse. I read it again, just to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding it. But no, the words stayed the same every time I looked. They were planning something behind my back. They had already started cutting things from my role. And the new VP, Daniel Brooks, was right in the middle of it. Daniel, the man who had barely joined the company 6 weeks ago. The polished guy with the perfect smile and the cold eyes. The one who shook my hand like he was evaluating me instead of meeting me. He was behind this. I scrolled deeper into the email chain. Each message made my stomach twist tighter. Talk about removing responsibilities. Talk about replacing me. Talk about doing it quietly. But then I reached the part that truly made my heart drop. A forwarded note from someone at Daniel's old company, be careful this time. Don't leave a trail like before. Before? What happened before? Why was no one supposed to know? And why was I the person he decided to push aside to cover whatever this was? I leaned back in my chair, frozen. It felt like the room grew colder around me. 12 years of hard work. 12 years of loyalty. 12 years of building something I believed in. And all it took was one email to tell me I was being quietly erased. The shock hit first. Then the disbelief. Then something else, something quieter but sharper. A slow, steady anger. Not the kind that makes you shout. The kind that sits deep inside your chest and whispers, this isn't right. But that wasn't even the scariest part. The scariest part was the question that formed in my mind as I stared at that email, reading it over and over again, how did everything come to this? If you had told me 12 years ago that one email would shake everything I'd built, I wouldn't have believed you. Because for most of my career, this place felt like home. I started at the company fresh out of college, nervous but determined. I wasn't the smartest or the fastest, but I cared. I cared a lot. And over time, that care turned into something bigger, a reputation. People trusted me. They knew I showed up early, stayed late, and never left anyone hanging. I wasn't chasing titles or attention. I just wanted to do good work. I built a small team, one I was proud of. We weren't flashy. We weren't loud. But we got things done. When a shipment was delayed, we fixed it. When a process broke, we rebuilt it. When two departments clashed, we stepped in and smoothed it out. We were the quiet engine behind the company's success. And honestly, I loved that. I loved being the person people came to when they needed something solved. I loved knowing my work mattered, even if no one clapped for it. My co-workers became friends. Some became family. And the company itself, with its steady rhythm and familiar routines, became part of my life. Mornings always started the same, the smell of fresh coffee, the hum of printers, little jokes in the hallway. Meetings were predictable, decisions were fair, and leadership felt human. There was a sense of stability here, a feeling that if you worked hard, you'd be respected. And for 12 years, that was true. I moved up slowly but steadily. Nothing handed to me. Everything earned. I learned every corner of the operations floor. Every system. Every person. Every pressure point that kept the company running. I wasn't just doing a job. I was protecting something I believed in. That's why, when things started to shift, it felt strange. Almost unreal. It began with small changes, new rumors, quiet worries, whispers about someone coming in from the outside to shake things up. People laughed it off at first, but you could feel a little tension grow day by day. Then came the announcement, a new VP was joining us. A big name from a bigger company. Someone forward-thinking, someone strategic, someone who was going to take us to the next level. I remember standing in the conference room during the introduction speech, clapping along with everyone else, even though something inside me felt uneasy. Change isn't always bad. But sometimes the wrong kind of change walks in wearing a perfect suit and an easy smile. At the time, I didn't know what was coming. I didn't know how quickly 12 years of loyalty could be dismissed. I didn't know how fast trust could crack. But looking back now, the signs were there. The culture started shifting the moment his name appeared on the organizational chart. I just didn't see it yet. And maybe that's why the betrayal hit so hard later on, because I truly believed this company valued people like me. People who stayed loyal. People who cared. People who held everything together quietly, day after day. But the arrival of the new VP was the first small tremor before the earthquake. I just didn't realize how big that earthquake would be. I knew the moment I saw him, something was going to change. I just didn't know how deeply it would cut. His name was Daniel Brooks. The new VP from the West Coast. A man the company described as vision-driven and transformational, the kind of phrases leaders use when they want people to be impressed before meeting someone. But the first time I shook his hand, I didn't feel impressed. I felt watched. His handshake was firm, too firm, like he wanted to test me. His smile looked perfect, but it didn't reach his eyes. And when he spoke, it was smooth and polished, like every sentence had been rehearsed. I remember thinking, he looks like someone who already has a plan. What I didn't know was that the plan already had my name on it. During that first meeting, he barely looked at me. He scanned the room the way someone scans a contract, searching for weak spots. When people talked, he nodded politely, but it was clear he was judging, measuring, deciding who mattered and who didn't. And when I introduced myself, this strange moment happened. He paused. Not long, but long enough for me to feel it. Like he had already made up his mind about me before I even spoke. Still, I tried to stay positive. New leaders bring new ideas. Change can be good, right? But the red flags showed up faster than I expected. The first one was small, a weekly operations meeting I had led for years suddenly happened without me. I thought it was a scheduling mistake. Then it happened again. And again. Next, a project I'd been managing for months was handed to someone else, no explanation, no conversation. I found out only because someone forwarded me a file asking for my input, even though my name had been removed from the main distribution list. My responsibilities didn't disappear all at once. They were chipped away, quietly. Piece by piece. At first, I told myself I was overthinking. Maybe Daniel just had a different workflow. Maybe he wanted to learn the team in his own way. But anxiety started creeping in. Every time a meeting invite popped up, I checked to see if my name was still included. Every time a project update was sent, I scanned it to see if my part was missing. Every time I walked into a room, I wondered if people knew something I didn't. And the strangest part? No one said anything. My coworkers noticed the changes, but they didn't want to get involved. Everyone was trying to stay on the new VP's good side. Everyone felt the shift in the air, that quiet tension that comes when leadership tries to restructure. I kept telling myself, there has to be a reason. There has to be an explanation. But deep down, another voice whispered, something is wrong. Something subtle. Something hidden. Something I couldn't see yet. The truth is, I didn't have proof. All I had were strange moments, shrinking responsibilities, and that uneasy feeling that my world was slowly being rearranged without my permission. But the real confirmation, the moment everything finally made sense, was still coming. And when it arrived in the form of one email that wasn't meant for me. I remember the moment I got the meeting request. It showed up in my inbox without a subject line, just a short message from Daniel's assistant saying, "The VP would like to meet with you at 3 p.m. No reason. No context. No hint of what was waiting for me. All afternoon, something heavy sat in my chest. It felt like walking toward a door you didn't want to open, but couldn't avoid. When I finally stepped into Daniel's office, the air felt colder. He was sitting at his desk, perfectly still, like he had practiced this moment. "Mark," he said, smiling without warmth, "thanks for coming." He didn't offer me coffee. He didn't make small talk. He didn't ask how I was doing. He went straight in. "I've been reviewing the structure of the department," he began, sliding a printed document across the table, "and I believe it's time for a more streamlined approach." Streamlined. That one word already told me more than he meant to. I looked down at the paper, and for a second, I felt my stomach drop. It wasn't a small adjustment. It wasn't a minor shift. It was almost half my role, gone. Projects I had built from scratch. Responsibilities I had managed for years. Teams I had trained and guided. All reassigned. I tried to keep my voice steady. "What's the reason for these changes?" Daniel leaned back, crossing his arms like he was explaining something simple. "Efficiency," he said. "We're preparing for a new direction, and this will help reduce overlap. You'll still have plenty to contribute." Plenty to contribute. The way he said it felt like a pat on the head, a polite push out the door. Inside, anger and disbelief twisted together, but I didn't let it show. I just nodded slowly, staring at the document as if it made sense. But it didn't. None of it did. These weren't random cuts. These weren't decisions made to help the company. This was targeted. Focused. Personal. And the more Daniel talked, the clearer it became that this conversation wasn't meant to involve me at all. My role had been reduced long before I walked into that room. This meeting was just a formality. I walked out of his office feeling smaller, like someone had quietly erased part of my identity. Like the work I'd poured myself into for 12 years suddenly didn't matter. The hallway felt different. Longer. Quieter. Coworkers passed me with polite smiles, unaware that my world had just shifted. And as I reached my desk, I sat there trying to understand what had just happened. Why me? Why now? What was he really planning? Because deep down, I knew this wasn't about efficiency. This wasn't about structure. This wasn't about progress. Something else was happening behind the scenes, something I couldn't see yet. But I could feel it. A quiet pressure. A hidden motive. And the worst part? I had no proof. Just a growing suspicion that this new VP wasn't here to build anything. He was here to move people out of the way. And somehow, I had landed at the top of his list. I wasn't supposed to see it. To this day, I still don't know how it landed in my inbox. Maybe fate stepped in, maybe someone simply typed the wrong name. But that one mistake changed everything. It was early morning, the kind where the office lights feel too bright and the world is still waking up. I opened my email like I always did, half distracted, sipping coffee, sorting through messages I thought were routine. And then I saw it. A long thread. Subject line, proposed adjustments, need confirmation. I clicked without thinking. The first few lines seemed simple enough, until my eyes caught something that made my heart stop. We should reduce Mark's influence before shifting him out. My name. Right there. Written like a task on a checklist. I froze. Shift me out. Just like that. I scrolled further, feeling my pulse climb with every word. Then came the next line, do it quietly. He won't fight it. He's the quiet type. Quiet type. That's what he thought of me. Someone who wouldn't push back. Someone he could remove without trouble. My hands tightened on the mouse. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a mistake in restructuring. This was a plan. A plan built behind closed doors. A plan that had started long before the meeting where he pretended my cut was about efficiency. Line after line confirmed it, conversations between Daniel and HR, discussions about timing. Statements about phasing me out. Hints about choosing someone more aligned. Every word cut deeper than the last. I kept scrolling, my stomach twisting. And then, something even stranger appeared. A forwarded message. From someone at Daniel's previous company. Short. Sharp. Be careful this time. Don't leave a trail like before. Before? What happened before? Why was someone warning him? What trail was he trying to avoid leaving? My mind raced. There was more to this than workplace politics. More than a simple leadership change. This was a man hiding something. A man afraid of being exposed again. And I had walked right into his path without knowing it. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, trying to make sense of what I'd just read. The office around me kept moving, people laughing, typing, talking, completely unaware that my entire world had just shifted. The betrayal felt sharp, but the shock was even stronger. 12 years of loyalty, dismissed in a message chain. 12 years of service, planned to be removed, quietly. 12 years of hard work, treated like an obstacle. But as the initial wave of anger and disbelief washed over me, something else rose up. Clarity. This wasn't a moment to react emotionally. Not with someone like Daniel. Not with someone who played this quietly and strategically. If I wanted to protect everything I'd built, I needed to be smarter than him. I closed the email. Saved the entire thread. Backed it up in 3 different places. Because now I knew the truth. And if Daniel wanted quiet, he chose the wrong person. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning of a very different plan. The moment I closed that email, something inside me shifted. Not loudly. Not with rage. But with a calm I can only describe as dangerous. Because quiet people are not weak. We're observant. We wait. We choose our moments. And this was my moment. I didn't storm into Daniel's office. I didn't confront HR. I didn't tell anyone what I had found. Instead, I switched into strategy mode. The first thing I did was start documenting everything. Every meeting I was removed from. Every project reassigned without explanation. Every odd comment. Every unnatural silence. I saved emails, screenshots, timelines, anything that showed a pattern. Because this wasn't just about my job anymore. It was about truth. And the truth was bigger than me. As days passed, I began noticing something I hadn't seen before. I wasn't the only one being pushed aside. One morning, a coworker whispered that her responsibilities had been cut too. Another said his project had been taken from him and handed to someone new. Someone else mentioned feeling boxed out, but didn't know why. The pattern was unmistakable. Daniel wasn't streamlining. He was rearranging the company around his own plan, a plan that had nothing to do with efficiency and everything to do with control. And that forwarded email, the warning from his old workplace. It kept echoing in my mind. Don't leave a trail like before. Whatever he had done in the past, whatever he was hiding, this company was about to become his cover-up. Unless someone stopped him. But I knew I had to be careful. Very careful. A man who works in silence, who makes plans behind locked doors, who removes people one by one without leaving a mess, that's not someone you expose recklessly. So I stayed quiet. Working normally. Smiling when people passed my desk. Pretending everything was fine. All while building a file that told the real story. A file Daniel never expected anyone to see. But the more I gathered, the clearer one thing became: HR was involved. My director was scared of him. My co-workers were confused and powerless. There was only one place left to go, the very top. The CEO. But you don't just walk into the CEO's office with accusations about his new VP. That's how careers get destroyed. So I went to the person who spoke for him, the chief of staff. I scheduled a meeting with a simple, neutral subject line: organizational questions. No drama. No alarm. When the meeting was confirmed, I felt a rare mix of fear and relief wash over me. Fear, because once I shared this, there was no turning back. Relief, because the truth was finally moving toward the light. I backed up the evidence one last time. Took a breath. And reminded myself, quiet people aren't weak. Quiet people are underestimated. And sometimes, that's exactly what gives us the advantage. The time had come to expose everything, carefully, calmly, and unmistakably. I knew the moment I stepped into that conference room, nothing would ever be the same again. It was small, quiet, tucked away on the top floor where only senior staff held meetings. The blinds were half closed, letting in just enough daylight to make the room feel tense. The CEO sat at the head of the table. His chief of staff beside him. Both watching me with calm, curious eyes. "Mark," the CEO said gently, "you asked for this meeting. What's going on?" My heart was pounding, but my voice stayed steady. "Thank you for seeing me. I need to show you something important." I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward them. The room shifted instantly. You could feel the gravity settle in. I began with the timeline, the meetings I was removed from, the responsibilities reassigned without reason, the slow dismantling of my role. Then I showed them the emails. Every message. Every line. Every carefully worded plan to move me out. The CEO leaned forward, eyebrows knitting together as he read. But when he reached the lines about shifting me out quietly, his expression hardened. And when he saw the forwarded message from Daniel's old workplace, the warning about not leaving a trail this time, his jaw tightened. The chief of staff looked stunned. The CEO looked betrayed. Finally, he sat back and took a deep breath. "I've heard whispers about Daniel's previous job," he said quietly. "Rumors. Nothing proven. But this," he tapped the screen with 2 fingers. "This is proof." The room fell silent. Not awkward silence, the kind of silence that comes right before a storm. I could see the CEO processing everything, the lies, the manipulation, the pattern of cutting people out, the possibility that Daniel had brought old problems into a new company. The chief of staff finally spoke. "We need to act on this immediately." And they did. Right there in that room, the CEO began drafting instructions for a full internal review. HR was ordered to release every document connected to Daniel's decisions. Directors were scheduled for interviews. Old references were contacted. Previous reports were reopened. The investigation moved fast, so fast I almost couldn't believe it. Every hour brought a new question. Every hour brought new evidence. Every hour brought the truth closer to the surface. And within 48 hours, Daniel was gone. No speech. No announcement. No farewell email. He was escorted out quietly, the same way he tried to push me out. Only this time, the silence felt like justice. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I didn't feel victorious. I felt relieved that the truth had finally been seen, relieved that the company I gave 12 years to had listened, relieved that integrity still mattered. As I walked out of the building that day, the CEO stopped me. "Mark," he said, "thank you for your honesty. You protected this company. For the first time in a long time. I felt seen. And somewhere deep inside, I knew this wasn't just the end of Daniel's plan, it was the beginning of something new for me." When the dust finally settled, the building felt different. It wasn't louder. It wasn't busier. It was calmer, like a heavy pressure had lifted off the whole place. People walked through the halls with easier steps, as if they didn't realize how tense they had been until that tension disappeared overnight. The quiet whispers stopped. The nervous glances faded. The team I'd worked with for years, they finally looked like themselves again. And slowly, piece by piece, my world began to return to me. The first sign came in an early morning email from the CEO. Short. Direct. "Let's restore your role. Come see me." Restore. I stared at that word for a long moment. After everything Daniel had taken, everything he tried to break apart, the idea of getting it back almost felt unreal. But it didn't stop there. In the days following his removal, my responsibilities were returned, every one of them. Projects I built from scratch came back under my name. Teams I had trained were placed back under my guidance. Systems I designed were reinstated exactly how they used to be. For the first time in months, I felt steady again. My team noticed it too. They started stopping by my office more often, checking in, asking questions, smiling in a way I hadn't seen since before the chaos began. "Feels like things are normal again," one of them said. But it wasn't just normal. It was better. Because now, they knew I'd fought for them. Even if they didn't know the details, they understood that something had been threatened, and something had been saved. A week later, I was called into the CEO's office. He didn't speak right away. He just looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before, part respect, part gratitude. "Mark," he said finally, "what you did took courage. Most people would have stayed silent." I didn't know what to say. I wasn't trying to be brave. I was just trying to protect the place that had shaped my life for 12 years. The CEO continued, "You didn't just save your role. You protected this entire company from someone who was using it for the wrong reasons. That kind of integrity matters." Then he handed me a document. A promotion. Not a bandage. Not compensation. Recognition. He wasn't rewarding me for surviving what Daniel tried to do. He was acknowledging the truth I brought to light. And in that moment, something softened inside me. For months I had felt erased, pushed aside, treated as if I didn't matter. But now, I felt seen again. Respected again. Restored. As I walked back to my office, the weight I'd been carrying for so long finally lifted. What defeated Daniel wasn't force. It wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge in the loud, dramatic sense. It was truth. Quiet, steady truth. The kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard. The kind that stands firm even when someone tries to bury it. The kind that brings everything back into the light, no matter how deeply someone tries to hide it. In the end, that truth didn't just protect my career. It reminded me who I was, a quiet person, but never a weak one. If there's one thing this whole experience taught me, it's that revenge doesn't need fire to burn. Sometimes, the strongest kind of revenge is calm. Quiet. Measured. The kind that doesn't destroy anything, it simply exposes what was hidden. For a long time, I thought staying silent was the safest way to hold on to my job, my stability, my place at the company. I thought being the quiet type meant I had to accept whatever came my way. But I learned something important: quiet doesn't mean powerless. Quiet doesn't mean passive. Quiet doesn't mean easy to erase. Quiet can mean observant. Quiet can mean patient. Quiet can mean steady enough to wait for the right moment. And when that moment arrives, quiet people speak in a way that cannot be ignored. Looking back, Daniel tried to use silence as a weapon. He wanted to move people out of the way without noise, without resistance, without questions. But the truth has a strange way of breaking through, even when someone tries to bury it. No matter how carefully he planned, no matter how quietly he tried to push me aside, the truth rose to the surface the moment he slipped. One email, one thread I was never supposed to see, unraveled everything he built on manipulation. And when I finally spoke up, it wasn't with anger or shouting or threats. It was with clarity. Calm, steady clarity. I simply held up the truth and let it speak for itself. And that's what brought justice. Not chaos. Not destruction. Just truth. The kind of truth that leaves a person speechless. The kind of truth that restores what was broken. The kind of truth that protects the people who rely on you. And yes, it took courage to walk into that room with the CEO. Yes, my hands were shaking. Yes, a part of me feared losing everything. But moments like that reveal who we really are. Manipulators work in the shadows. People of integrity don't need shadows at all. When everything finally settled, when my role was restored, when the team was safe, when the truth had replaced the lies, I realized something deeper: my voice mattered long before I used it. I just needed to believe that. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this: quiet people aren't weak. We aren't invisible. We aren't easy to move aside. We just choose our moments. And when we finally speak, when we decide the truth must be heard, that truth carries real weight. It can change a room. It can change a decision. It can change an entire company. And sometimes, it can even change a life. Mine did. If this story touched you, don't leave quietly. Hit like so it reaches someone who needs this strength. Hit subscribe to hear more stories of truth and justice. And share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters more than you think. Remember, quiet people aren't weak. We just choose the right moment to speak. Thanks for watching. Stay strong.